Boo Pharisees. Boo.
Yeah, I know, right?
Hey guys, and welcome to Anchor to Truth. Tonight we are diving into chapter 15 in the Book of Jubilees. So let's get started.
And in verse 1 of chapter 15 says, "And in the 5th year of the 4th week of this Jubilee, in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, Abram celebrated the feast of the first fruits of the grain harvest. And he offered new offerings on the altar, the first fruits of the produce unto Yahuwah, and heifer, and a goat, and a sheep on the altar as a burnt sacrifice unto Yahuwah. Their fruit offerings and their drink offerings he offered upon the altar with frankincense. And Yahuwah appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am Elohim Almighty. Approve thyself before me, and be thou perfect, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly."
So right off the rip, we're diving into the feast of first fruits of the grain harvest. And it
Yes.
tells us in verse 1, and in verse 2, I got it highlighted here, all the things that were to be put on the altar.
Yeah, what's interesting about the first fruits is, that whenever we go back and look through the calendar and we look through all the biblical feasts, there's actually 3 that are noted. So it's interesting here that we're just getting an example of one of them, where we have the first fruits of the harvest, or the barley, the wheat. We have one of the wine and the grape, and then we have one at the end of the year with pretty much everything else at the end of the fall. That's just the end of your crop cycle for the year. You're pretty much wrapping it up, and that's whenever you're going to have your time of Sukkot. So it was just a fun little nugget to see that these feast days are making it in there, and then one of them is called the first fruits.
No, what's interesting here is when we're looking at this, it's talking about Shavuot. So we have Abram here who's celebrating the feast of the first fruits of the grain harvest, and right there on the left-hand side, the footnote there says, the Feast of Weeks, the Pharisees celebrate this feast not on Sivan 15th, but on Sivan 6th, which is wrong. So, but
Boo Pharisees. Boo.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh boy. But anyway, so it's cool to see that Abram is, again, he's celebrating one of the feast days. And from a few chapters back, we realize, again, we go back to the point where the angel opens his mouth. He's able to understand Hebrew. He's able to actually get the old scrolls or the books or whatever he was reading that the angel brought before him. And I believe, again, this is evident that he only knows to do these things is because he was actually taught by Yahuwah to actually observe and to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I will point out one thing, the note over here on the side also. It says the offerings prescribed for this festival in Leviticus 23, verses 18 through 20, are different, though not significantly. So let's take a look at that real quick. So Leviticus 23, 18 through 20 says, And ye shall offer with the bread 7 lambs without blemish of the first year, and 1 young bullock, and 2 rams. They shall be for a burnt offering unto the Lord, with their meat offering, and their drink offerings, even an offering made by fire of sweet savor unto the Lord. Then ye shall sacrifice 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, and 2 lambs of the first year for a sacrifice of peace offerings. And the priest shall wave them with the bread of the first fruits for a wave offering before the Lord. With the 2 lambs, they shall be holy to the Lord for the priest. So what are the differences that you're seeing here?
All right, right off the bat here, what I'm seeing the difference is that we're looking at, this is now the Levitical priesthood. This is their meal. This is what the Father's preparing for them as well to eat. With Abram, I'm not sure if he'll be eating this. I guess he could be, but the fact that the Father's he's made a covenant with the priests of Haran.
Yeah, Joe, a very similar thought process there. I mean, I think we see during the time of Leviticus, we already have some establishment of the people. We already have the mixed multitude. We already have a lot of the things that are necessary for a community and a large group. And when you have a large group, you're going to have more priests. You're going to have more official duties and whatnot. So you're going to have so many more people showing up with offerings, so many people more showing up with these different items that are commanded and required. Where here we're kind of seeing the initial kind of phases of it. We're seeing it being established. And with that establishment, what would be the purpose of sacrificing 7 bulls? We kind of have to remember that God doesn't just love the idea of killing animals and blood all over the place. That was never really the goal and intention. So it's not some bloodbath. It's not some thing where it's all quiet in the temple and they're just slitting animals' throats and behind the curtain, no one gets to see it. It's very much so an intimate thing with the Father. It's very much so a meal, an interaction. It's what the Father designed from the beginning in creation. He wanted to walk with his creation. He wanted to be with his creation, and he wanted to share experiences with them. That's why we see Yeshua say things along the lines of, "I go to prepare a mansion. I go to prepare a table. I won't have this Passover again till we do it all together in the future." So when we look at a lot of those thoughts and concepts, we can see it, the evolution of it, the beginnings of it, the very, very first thought of, hey, this is how we would do this. Now there's only a few of us, me and my family camp. So this, we're going to pretty much do it in the correct proportion. There would be no reason for it to be some grandiose experience if it wasn't for the people who are involved. It's very intimate. It's very exact,
Right.
according to who and what the scenario is. And I just love that in Leviticus, it does really show, like, hey, now that you have these millions of people, now that you have all of this camp, hey, you're going to have to do things a little bit differently. We're going to have to
Right.
prescribe it a little bit more. And we're going to have to make it very, very detailed, because these are a mixed multitude. Some of them have never seen or heard of these things. Where here he's just like, yeah, the angel came to me, taught me some Hebrew, showed me some stuff. I kind of know what to do. Me and my family are going to take care of business.
Yeah, so I mean that I'm kind of getting the same thing. It's not so much that the offerings are necessarily different; it's that the quantity is different. That's what I'm seeing here, and the quantity is different, like you guys have already stated, because of you're dealing with Abraham and his group versus all of
All of Israel.
Israel, right? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's a much bigger deal.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, there's nothing that brings family together like a good old barbecue as well.
Right. And also I would like, let me throw this in here too. So going back to Jubilees here, it talks about the drink offering and the offerings he offered up upon the altar with frankincense. So we see that referenced as that sweet savor. Those things are still applied there. And the first fruits of the produce, that would be your grains and all that kind of stuff, right? So that would be your bread. So even though there might not be quite as many details, same purpose, same jobs getting done, just more specific for the Israelites than what is being done here. A more detailed version of the same thing is what I see on a larger scale.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, one of the big points that I wanted to bring up here is when we look at verses 3 and 4, it talks about Yahuwah appearing to Abram. So, one, again, this is one of those big, larger than life moments for Abram. The Father himself is appearing to him in whatever form or fashion that he chose to, whether it be agency with an angel or the smoke, or any other form that he's taken in a previous time or in a future time. But when he appears to him, he says, "I'm Elohim Almighty. Approve thyself before me, and thou be perfect." So he's kind of giving him I told you what to do. Now, as you do this, do it in a way that's approving to me. Don't do it the way that you feel that's okay. Don't think that your own ways are going to be good enough. Do it exactly the way that I'm telling you, and this is how you're going to be perfect before me. And he follows up and saying, now when you do this exactly the way that I told you, because it's very, very important, then I will make the covenant between you and I will multiply you exceedingly. Essentially, I'll remember that promise that we just talked about. That's not going away. And you continue to walk this path with me. You continue down the path of righteousness and sanctification and all those good things. Yeah, that promise isn't going away. Only reason that promise can go away is it's something that you would do to break covenant. But even then, he's like, this covenant, but from before, with him passing through the animals, he's like, I'm doing this on my own. So even if you were to break it, I still got you, but I really, really, really want you to keep this covenant with me.
Right. And it's no different than the process that the high priest would have to go through in order to prepare for the moments when they would make these sacrifices, right? The high priests were always preparing for that next event so that they were perfect before the Father.
I got a question to lay out there too for you guys. So it just kind of dawned on me as we were reading this and I'd like to get your point of view on this, and then for you guys that are watching us, I'd like to get your comments on it as well. It seems like Abraham is the first person since Noah to actually start doing these feasts and festivals again. Out of all creation, it seems like, because it said, when we're reading it earlier in Jubilees, that basically that the Hebrew was hidden and then it was revealed to Abram. And so from the time of Noah till now the time of Abram, it looks like it's almost like God starting over with Abram. And this is exciting not only for Abram, but it's also exciting for God, because he finally has someone who's actually like, hey, I want to serve you. You are my God. And how many times does Yahuwah tell Abram, I am your God. I am your Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
He tells him multiple times, multiple times, multiple times. And so it just kind of dawned on me as we're reading, is like, this has got to be a really good thing for our Heavenly Father as well, because he's like, finally, I have someone who's going to like do the things that I had from the very beginning, and now we're going to do them again. And right there where we're reading, and it says in verse 3, and it says, and Yahuwah appeared to Abraham and said unto him, I am Elohim Almighty, approve thyself before me and be thou perfect. I think this is God saying in a way, man, you're doing a great job, son. Keep it up. Because guess what? In verse 4, he backs up and says, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. Because God is excited that he has a man who is actually keeping his ways. And what did it say that was accounted unto righteousness unto Abram? Why? What was that? Because he believed.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that the Father actually calls Abram my friend. I think that's huge. I think that's incredibly awesome. That the God of everything, all creation, is look at this man and say, you are my friend because you believe in me. Where the rest of the world, where Noah's sons are out drinking blood and doing all the things they're not supposed to be doing, I've got someone now who has a heart to serve me. And I think that's amazing. And God's like, guess what, son? I'm about to bless the mess out of you, and everyone after you is going to be blessed. And all the nations will be blessed because of you. We're having this conversation right now on Anchor to Truth because of Abram and his obedience to the Father. If it wasn't for that, I don't know where we'd be right now.
Right.
Maybe not here doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. The idea of since Noah, this being the first situation, because I mean it does make sense because you know during the life of Noah, he would have been in the role of the high priest of all that were there
Mm-hmm.
then, right? And it does tell us, like you already pointed out, like when he died, and they ate blood, right? So, so
Yeah.
that makes sense to me, and I don't remember anyone in between here that has any covenant practices that I remember. So I think that's correct.
Yeah, so Joe, I think what you were saying on there about, Abram being the one to kind of reestablish the covenant. Obviously, I think that what you're looking at is you're looking at some precursor information. You're seeing Abram's heart, and he's got a heart that's after the Father and after the Father's ways. And what you're going to do is when you see that play out,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see it in the form of when he's burning the idols down. And whenever everybody else is kind of going astray, he said,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel like that's right for me. I'm not going to disrespect my dad, but I'm not going to do that. And, he's looking up at the stars. He's taking all these different moments in his life to find himself set apart. He's taking all these different opportunities to just do a little bit different. He's fighting off the ravens. Just these different kind of ideals where almost you get like a David. Hey, this big giant's mocking all of us. He's like, you're not going to mock my God, and I'm not going to stand by idle and let this happen. I don't really know what's going on or how this is going to play
Mm-hmm.
out, but I know I have to act. And when you see Abram's heart, I said you see that a lot whenever he's burning on the idols, because you looked at our recent study in Deuteronomy. And, it says when you go into the nations and you're taking over these different communities, you burn their idols. And then you're like, well, where did that practice come from? It probably came back from Abram the first time that he did it. And God was like, hey, that was kind of cool. I
I
might
like
write
that
that
idea.
down for everybody to do that in the future. Hey, that solved the
Yep.
problem ASAP.
Yep.
So, you see things like that, and we'll see future where Abrams, has to have the opportunity. Well, opportunity is the wrong word, but he has an experience where he might end up sacrificing his son, and you know, the father's going to look at that and be like, "I'm going to have to do that one day. You truly have a heart like my heart." So, I think that's what sets him apart so much. It's not how he grew up. It's not where he grew up. It's not how much money he had, or if he had any influence, or who his daddy was. It was literally his heart, and I think that's the biggest distinction that we're going to see here for Abram, and why he might be, if not was, the first person to bring back this covenant talk and this relationship with the Father.
Yeah, and I would say that Abram is truly the definition of being set apart from his generation. Just everything you said and everything we've been covering so far, he truly is the definition of set apart.
Okay. You know what? I know we have beat in the ground just about everything you could cover in 4 verses, right? So we've been talking for a long time, but I've got to ask this. We have all these things that are listed as far as what needs to be done here for this feast, for this festival, first fruits. The question is this something that we are still supposed to do today? And if so, how?
That's a good question, Kyle. You know, if just right off the top of my head, I'll be honest with you, I don't see why we couldn't.
I might only have 2 nickels in my pocket, but I'll share them here. So I think that when we're looking at this experience, again, it's that intimate, like sitting at the dinner table. You know, if you grew up in a big family, or you grew up with a father and a mother, and you guys had that dinner time talk. When you look at it that way, it's less of this stoic, archaic style of what you would think in the castle with the big table in the front, and everybody's sitting around waiting in line, and they play the little flute thingies, and it's all like timed, and everything's set up in this format that's real boring and dry. Versus, I think this is just saying, like, hey, these are opportunities, just like our Sabbaths, just like our other feast days. These are opportunities to meet with the Father. These are opportunities where we get to share with Him. And I think, you know, when we look at like an opportunity where we get to, as a brothers and sisters, we get together to break bread and have a meal together. When we say, hey, 2 or more gathered, than He is here, we're actually bringing, I think, the spirit behind what's happening. And yes, we're going to get later on in Leviticus and some of our Old Testament, we're going to get some more like very prescribed ways of doing these things. But it seems to be that place is with the temple and with the tabernacle of, like, you don't see them getting that information for, hey, if you're the tribe of Dan and you're out in your tent, 17 blocks down the desert, you need to be doing these same things. It's like, hey, it's all about that community. It's all about getting together, and it's about honoring the Father. And if we look at it that way, then I could say for sure, I don't know if we can kind of walk through every single part of this in the way that it's prescribed, being that some of the things are very specific and detailed. But I think the heart behind it and a lot of it we probably can do for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest questions that people have, because the question as to whether we should be doing sacrifices and that sort of stuff, um, it's a big conversation. It's a big debated subject for a lot of reasons, because we have one camp that says we don't need to do any sacrifices because Yeshua was all of those, and all that's done away with now, right? And then we have another camp that says, yes, we are supposed to keep the feast, but we can't do them in this specific order, but in this specific way, because we don't have the Levitical priesthood anymore. Well, this is being done prior to Levitical priesthood. Number one.
Yeah.
And number two, we have Yeshua tell us that He will make us a kingdom of priests. Now, granted, have we been made that yet? That's up for debate also with amongst some people. I personally don't believe that we've been made a kingdom of priests yet, but we are practicing for that role to get there, right? So again, the question still remains: can we still? Not only can we still do this, but I guess more importantly, should we still be doing this? Right? If Yeshua is our high priest, is that something that He's doing for us? Are sacrifices being made on our behalf right now? Right. So there's a lot of questions that need to be discussed, or that need to be addressed. And I would say to those who feel as though they have this completely figured out without addressing all of those topics and some more at the same time, I think you'd be doing a very big disservice to yourself, to the scriptures, and to the Father, not to address them with that heart of truly wanting to know, is this something that we should be doing? And at the same time, is this physical aspect something that can be done in a spiritual expression nowadays? So we'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. So please leave a comment down below. I'm sure there's going to be lots of typing involved in your answers. But we want to hear them. So let us know what you think.
I'd like to expound on this a little bit just off the top of my head. on this one off the top of my mind. All right. First of all, I think when we think of sacrifice, we think, I don't know. I think there's sometimes a negative connotation to sacrifice, or we think of the term sacrifice, just a sacrifice. When we read this, in the heavenly realm, apparently they eat. Okay. Food is involved, whether you're in the heavenly realm or you're on the earthly realm, food is involved. And here's the deal with this. These feast days are for us to be with him. And God's like, what a better way to get together is, and I use this term very loosely, to have a big barbecue. Okay.
Right.
If God wasn't into this, why is it a sweet savor to him? Because we all know that if you barbecued in the neighborhood, and especially if you're cooking over coals, man, you can smell that a mile away, and it smells good.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
imagine if the Father is putting this in his words. He's like, hey, when you do these things, it's going to be right. Abraham, get this right now. It's going to be a sweet savor unto me. You get to eat, and I'm going to show up to this because, family gets together. I mean, I'll tell you, family's always around the dinner table. In my house, and growing up, we're around the dinner table. My grandmother on my dad's side, that lady lived in the kitchen. And every time you came to her house, she had food on the stove, food ready. It didn't matter if you just ate a buffet. When you walked into grandma's house, she was my nanny, that's what our nickname for her was, our nanny. When you walked into her house, it didn't matter if you were full or not. You were going to eat, period. I see these not so much in the way that sometimes I think we think of sacrifice and we think of this bloody mess, like you're kind of saying earlier, Kyle,
Right.
where there's like this slaughtering going on and blood's everywhere. No, they're just preparing food to eat. And Jehovah says, when you prepare this food to eat and you prepare it the way I want you to, we're getting together on this day. This is a special day that I'm getting together with you because it's all around food again. Food draws everybody in. And like I said, in the heavenlies and in the earthly realm, there's food involved. So when I see
Right.
this and you ask me, can we do this? I'm going to say right now, top of my head, absolutely. Because all he's doing is saying, hey, you're gonna cook these things, you're gonna do this prescribed way. And by the way, let's not forget that the entire tribe of Israel was supposed to be doing this, not the Levitical priesthood. And I say that from the beginning before they messed up with the golden calf. The entire nation of Israel was supposed to have been a lamp or a light set up on a hill for all the nations. So when Moses goes up, he gets the 10 words, he gets the tablet written with the finger of God and comes back, and everybody, not everybody, but a large group of them are messing up. That's when the Levitical priesthood, guys like, you were the only guys who you weren't a part of this. So therefore, you're going to be my guys. And so where the entire nation was supposed to be doing this. So when you ask me, can we do this? It was supposed to be the entire nation doing this, not just the Levites. So for me personally, I don't have a problem with it. On these feast days, trying to do the best we can and basically having a barbecue and asking the Father to be there with us while we're doing it. So that's me, but other people may see it differently. But I think it's all about relationship. God's into the family business, and so these prescribed days is for us to be with Him. Period. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not about this sacrifice. It's not about these different things. God's like, I just want to be with you. And while we're together, we're going to eat. We're going to have a good time.
It is a covenantal meal, right? I mean, that it
Yeah.
every even if you think back to the days of the knights and all that kind of stuff, like when kings would get together and they would make an agreement on something, they would have a
Mm-hmm.
meal, right? It's a covenantal
Yep.
meal. It's just it's a
Absolutely.
practice that has gone on since the dawning of time, right? So um, having a meal for covenant purposes is just a thing that you do. It happens today in our modern society. If
Yep.
there's a company merger going on or some businessman's trying to get a new client or whatever, what is the most common thing they do? They take that client out to dinner, right, and discuss all the
Yep.
details, and they wine them and dine them with the fanciest food, the best that they can offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? It's not to impress the person. It's to let that other person know this is how dedicated I am to this. I'm willing to give you the best that I can give you for us to come into agreement on this matter. Right. So I think Joe,
Yep.
I think everybody, Jonathan brought up the bloody mess earlier, and so I want to give him the kudos on that one.
Okay, we'll
And
give you the credit on that one.
yeah, and Joe, you bringing that up also, man. I think that is so key for people to understand when they're hearing us asking this question. You know, is this something that needs to happen again? Because all we're talking about is having a meal. You know, if the word sacrifice
Mhm.
was taken out, and this was simply, hey, we're gonna have some lamb chops, and we're gonna have, you know, some deer or some cow or whatever, you know, nobody would bat an eye unless you're a vegan or vegetarian, right? So
Mhm.
everybody would be
And
like,
then
okay,
you're
more
just not
power.
invited then.
Right.
Grain offering only.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, you can bring a grain offering and the wine offering, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, there's nobody would be offended by that if we were talking about having a meal. But when the word sacrifice is thrown in there, then some kind of
yeah,
ooh comes across people's minds, like there's some kind of something wrong with it. So just make sure you recognize that all sacrifice means is you're giving up something that you're giving up the best
yeah,
of something that you have to come into agreement for covenant, and you're having a meal in doing so. That's all it
yep.
is. It's not this, you know, freaky thing that everybody wants to make out for the word sacrifice. So
Right.
anyway, that's my 2 shekels on that.
Well, and a super quick example of that. Let's look at like when you're born, you have baby shower, you have something to eat. Whenever you get married, you have a rehearsal dinner, you have a meal during the wedding. And when you die, even dead people, you go get done, there's a potluck afterward. There's a buffet
Right?
afterward. I don't know why that's a thing, but that's just how humanity's just run since forever. It's something that happens, a
Mhm.
big event, a change in life, graduation, you get together and have a meal, your birthday, whatever it is. That's what we just eat. We like to get together and do a food thing that brings people together, that brings laughter, hopefully, normally, and
Right?
you have good experiences. So yeah, I think for the meal side of it, there's definitely for sure the positive aspect of that, and we carry those principles through today.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, let's see if we can get through a little bit more of this chapter before it gets too late. Joe, get us going, brother.
All right, let's do it. All right, in verse 5, it says, And Abram fell on his face, and Elohim talked with him and said, Behold, my ordinance is with thee, and thou wilt be the father of many nations. Neither will thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name from henceforth, even forever, shall be Abraham. For the father of many nations have I made thee, and I shall make thee very great, and I shall make thee into nations, and kings will come forth from thee. And I shall establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee, throughout their generations, for an eternal covenant, so that I may be a Elohim unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And I shall give to thee and to thy seed after thee the land where thou hast been a sojourner, the land of Canaan, that thou mayest possess it forever, and I shall be their Elohim.
So for all you guys watching, I'm ready to go ahead and be done with Abram. I keep wanting to say Abraham every single time because that's how I know him. And I've been really good about saying Abram, but now we can switch. It's Abraham. We're all good
I
now.
know.
We made it.
All right, so yeah, in verse 9, it talks about the after their generations for an eternal covenant. So, we always have that conversation, depending on what groups we're in and what people we're talking to, what covenants are done away with. Do we have a new covenant, old covenant, past covenant, all that kind of stuff? Well, when you hear language like this, it seems to me at least, just from reading the plain language on the paper, eternal means eternal. So that would mean at minimum from the time it was established until forever forward. And that's one of the things that's really comforting to know, when we're trying to balance out our life and we're trying to, our faith walk and how we live, when we see these eternal covenants, these are things that we can bank on. These are essentially super signed, documented promises from God that we can really hold on to, that we can cherish, that we can call on during, times of trouble. And what's this covenant? That he's going to be with them and through all their generations. And we read in 10, it goes on, he says, that you may possess it forever, and I will be their Elohim. Now, here's one of my favorite parts about this little portion here. Before it's Abram, I'll be your Elohim. Me and you, Abraham, me and you. It's always like, hey, you turn to me, I'll turn to you. We'll walk this out together. Now we're starting to see this transcendence of this covenant from Abraham off into everybody. He says, and I will be their Elohim. So I love the fact that it's like, this isn't something, God's not selfish with his love. He's not, oh, I'm just going to isolate myself in this little corner with this one guy and we're going to have this really cool holy experience. He's like, man, my goal is to be with all men. And it took Abram to start that, and so I think in our own lives that we can look to Abram's example and, let's say we have a bad family upbringing. Let's say that we grew up in a country that didn't accept Yeshua or God or anything, that we could be an individual Abram or Abraham. We can bring that faith and that covenant in. And then he said, that love that I have with you and that relationship I have with you, we get to spread this out to everybody that you meet. You get to be the light. You get to be salt. And watch how I magnify my name, and I'll do it through you. And it'll just increase your faith, and you'll see the fruit for forever and ever. So yeah, this little section here just kind of gave me just a real warm and fuzzy reading it.
Yeah, I want to put a little emphasis on that in verse 9. It says, "And I shall establish." So we hear about him establishing his covenant between me and thee already prior to this verse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now in verse 9 it's saying, "And I shall establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee," even though again we've already heard it said afterwards. But what takes place during that covenant? The sacrifice that we've just been spending all this time on so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this covenantal meal, coming into covenant with the Father, right? So it does. So addressing that, and then also addressing what you also brought up with the eternal covenant part. For the eternal covenant, that means after Jesus comes, we don't have to do this anymore, right?
Sure.
That's
No.
right. It's all abolished. It's done away with, man. It's done.
Yeah,
Fini.
everything. Yeah, been
Yeah.
done away with.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
if you
lost it.
can't
I
tell,
couldn't find it.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you can't tell, guys, this is sarcasm. Okay, sarcasm.
Yeah.
Eternal
We're being
means
sarcastic.
forever, right?
Forever.
Longer
Not
than
Well, just
forever.
remember too that
not
if
ending
these
ever.
things, and we've read multiple times that these things were already established in the kingdom of God in the heavenly realm. These things have been going on from the very beginning as well.
From the beginning. You
And
got it.
when
Yep.
Yeshua went back to the Father under the order of Melchizedek, the high priest, guess what? These things are continuing to go on to this day. So there was
Mhm.
nothing abolished or done away with. It's just became the more perfect priesthood now is taken over for this. And therefore, Yeshua is standing as our advocate before the Father daily and doing what they do best up there. I guess I don't know exactly what that is, but he's doing the right thing, so to speak. And
And
here's the thing too. When we break these down, like I was just talking about earlier, so Abba wants to get together with his kids. He wants to have a meal with us. He wants us to be family, come together. Why would we want to look at that now and go, "Oh, let's abolish that. Let's do away with it"? And again, it's the ignorance of, and I'm trying to be kind. It's the ignorance of people not understanding the Word of God. That what's taking place here is, again, this is about family. God's desire to be with His creation. He's like, look, I'm giving you every opportunity here. Matter of fact, every 7 days is, Shabbat is a feast day, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know that. Every 7
right.
days, Yahuwah's like, I want to be with you. I want us to get together. I want you to read my word. I want you to talk about it. I want you to get together as family. I want you to do these things. And by the way, I'm going to give you all these feast days that we can do it all even more. And we can get together as family. Because when he comes back, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? When the New Jerusalem comes down, he's looking for family. He's looking for those people who are saying, hey, you know what? I want to do that. I want to be in that kingdom with you, Abba. And so Abba's telling us throughout his entire word how to get to that place of being with him when it's all said and done. So it's a beautiful picture again. And the more we grow in this, the more I realize there's nothing abolished. There's nothing done away with anything. It's crazy to think that. So yes, it was sarcasm earlier. These things will take place. They're already taking place in the heavenlies, and when the New Jerusalem comes here to the earth, guess what, folks? It's all going to continue from there. And amen and Hallelujah to that. I look forward to the big family reunion we're going to have one day with all of our loved ones that have went ahead of us, and for all of us who are going to be together and with our new heavenly bodies and all that good stuff. And, anyway, that's another 2 shekels to that one.
So with everything that we've been saying, guys, I hope that this is really starting to stand out to you. That what the Father is wanting is He's wanting to spend time with us. He's wanting to spend time with His children. And the saying is used so much today throughout Christianity. I think that the words that are said are spot on, but I don't think that most people have any understanding as to what they're saying. But the phrase that they always use is, God doesn't want religion, He wants a relationship. And that is absolutely 100% correct.
Yep.
The problem is most people do not seek out the ways to have that relationship with Him. That's the problem. Dig into your scriptures. Don't take my word. Don't take any of our words. Don't take your preacher's word
You can
either.
take my word on it. Take mine.
Get in the word. Read the word for what it says, and go to the Father and say, Father, let every man be a liar. Let your word be true. Reveal your truth. Reveal yourself to me. And He will show you the truth if you have that heart to seek Him. He will show you. Absolutely. He promises to do that. So none of this has been done away with. Seek Him first. That's New Testament. And His kingdom, right? And His righteousness. And all those
Amen.
things will be added unto you. Okay, so I had a couple of other things highlighted here. I had the up here, obviously in verse 7, where his name is finally Abraham. Yay, it's Abraham. And then down here below it says, and I shall make unto thee nations, and kings will come forth from thee. And you know what? My favorite king is the King of Kings, our Messiah.
Amen.
I love that one come. Can't wait for him to come back. I feel like we need a lot more time, but at the same time, even so, come. Throughout
Some
our
song lyrics there.
throughout their generations for an eternal covenant that is forever. And then down here in verse 10, Canaan, that thou mayest possess it forever. Let me point this out. So first of all, I wanted to point out the word there, Elohim, like you guys have already pointed out, right? There. Who? His descendants, the people that come after him, those that are, even if they're simply grafted in, right? Because this is not just his lineage. This is anyone who comes into camp with him. We're going to learn a little bit more about that as we read on in just a little bit. But there's a caveat I want to point out here. And I shall give to thee and thy seed after that the land whereas thou hast been a sojourner, the land of Canaan, that thou mayest possess it forever, and I shall be their Elohim. That thou mayest. That's a contractual statement. That thou mayest possess it forever. Now, has Israel possessed that land forever?
Nope.
No. So, are we having an issue here with the covenant? Is God's word not true?
No, what we're having an issue here with is with people. Not the Father, it's the people.
Right. This is an agreement that the Father made, again, a contractual thing. Do these things that thou mayest possess it forever. But they didn't do those things. They don't possess it forever.
Nope.
Well, Kyle, according to your ideas and concepts, and when we looked at some of the other land masses, speaking of that land being from the great river of Egypt all the way to the Euphrates, do they possess it now?
Definitely not all of it. And that also depends on who is and is not the rightful heirs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of fun that we can play with that. Just trying to figure out who's there, why are they there, are the people there actually in covenant? Because things don't seem to be playing out the way that it was promised all throughout Scripture. So yeah, lots of fun things to go on. We can listen to some of the conversations Yeshua had with the leadership at the time to see what he thought about it, and just learn the best that we can and understand the best that we can of how things are playing out, and even to go as far as the third temple type situation. What is that set up? Is that what landmass is that even going to be covering? What people group is going to be attached to that? So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff that there's a million spiderweb conversations that come out of this one little statement.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
So with that, guys, let us know what y'all's thoughts are down in the comments below, and we will see you next time for part 2 in chapter 15 in the Book of Jubilees. God bless.
Ciao.
Shalom.